carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined by my good friend Randy Nance back home in Texas, combat wounded, Green Beret, Captain Carnivalt. Maybe that was Captain Carnivalt. Just came to me. It's a brilliant idea. Just came to me. Captain Carnivalt. And below us, our good friend Jeff MD, 26-year CIA case officer, author extraordinaire, in-house 007. I got a question right out of the gate. I want to hear y'all's opinion, plus the audience. I love the Carnival opener for our podcast. I got one line of thought that says we should probably update it because it's been running for a while, but I got this other side of me. Like, I dig the music and the video opening and stuff. So if you think we should keep the Carnival opener the way it is, do me a favor, put a 1 in the live chat. If you think it's time to change it, put a 2 in the live chat. I'm serious. I'd love to hear everybody's opinion on it. I like to keep things fresh, but I mean, what do you think, Randy? You stick with it or me?
I'm still good with it. It hadn't gotten too old for me yet.
No, it's almost like your theme music.
Yeah. There's something about it. I just love that open. It gets me all fired up and ready to roll, sort of thing. And my watch agrees. It's going off already. Imagine that. We haven't even got into the topic of the night. So tonight we've got our next episode in our long war series, which is post 9/11 2.0 complex coordinated attacks on 10 to 15 American cities. And it's titled Hope Beyond Ruins. And it's essentially on the topic of the promise of renewal from rubble to resilience, how faith, unity, and vision can build a stronger future. But before we get into that, we're going to do the conflicted question of the night. And I think I got to get Jeff on stage. There we go. So conflictedthegame.com. There's a 14 card decks set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. 99% of them have some element of morality to them, hence the name Conflicted. I'm going to read this question off, and at the end of this episode, Jeff, Randy, and I will give you our answers. We want to see your answers in the comment section, in the live chat. And while you're doing that, by the way, please do me a favor, mash that thumbs up button for us. So the loss of a loved one has spiraled Simone into deep depression where she is contemplating suicide. How would you help a loved one through depression in the midst of the apocalypse? Interesting question. So we will answer that at the end of the episode. But before we do that, pardon me, Khalid is still under the weather, so he'll be back on Monday, and he appreciates all y'all sending him well wishes. I can relate to him. When you work crazy hours like we do, it wears down your immune system and you end up getting sick. So we will still do the Command 11 sit rep. And we're going to start with this one here. So I received some messages from some of our guardians saying that Iran had closed the Strait of Hormuz today. And apologies, Randy and Jeff, this didn't make it into the brief. So I went and looked into it a little bit more. And it doesn't look like they closed the Strait of Hormuz, but it looks like they seized a tanker. So this is 12 hours ago, breaking Iranian Navy commandos have seized an oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz just hours ago. The vessel was reportedly carrying crude oil from the UAE to Singapore when it was intercepted. And there's multiple stories on this. Here's another one posted 15 hours ago, so closer to the time that it happened. And Jeff knows this geography way better than I do. Jeff, this particular area where they're showing that it happened here, that looks like it's fixing to break into the Indian Ocean there. Is this just a really good spot to do this type of activity?
Well, it's right there where it kind of goes into the Arabian Sea,
Okay.
or the Gulf of Oman, which goes into the Arabian Sea.
Okay.
It's if they did it where you had the circle, it's an interesting area because it's got Iran on one side, but on the other side you've got Oman and the UAE, but no Saudis. Because if they're on the other side, you got Saudi Navy in there, but there you really don't. And so, Qatar's not there either. So, and Oman is not very aggressive about this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I don't think that the UAE is either. So, who's going to stop them? If not us or the Brits, no one's going to mess. They can get away with it.
Okay. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. Now, if they did it on the other side of that peninsula, they'd be running into the U.S. Fifth Fleet, and they could still run into them over there as well. But they've been quiet lately, so we probably haven't been patrolling that area as aggressively as we used to.
Okay.
But if they go into the Persian Gulf and they pull that crap, they may eat a tomahawk or something.
So that was basically my question. So you don't foresee this as a escalating event, particularly?
Well, yeah, it definitely could be, because that's somebody's ship and somebody's crew and somebody's oil, and thing is if it's UAE oil, well, Iran does a lot of their banking in the UAE, and a lot of whenever they're trying to evade sanctions and by importing stuff they're not supposed to import, it almost always goes through the UAE. So they're really kind of kicking over their rice bowl with this one, kind of pissing in the wrong Cheerios.
Well, I guess we shall see what comes out of it in the next few days. Moving on to the next one, and this is a post from our friend Sarah Adams, Paris 2015, Lessons for Your Community. This is a little bit long, so bear with me, but it's very comprehensive, and then I'm coming straight to you first on this one, Randy. So Paris 2015, Lessons for Your Community. On November 13th, 2015, coordinated terrorist attacks hit Paris. 130 people were killed, 494 wounded. It started at 9:20 p.m. with a suicide bomber outside the Stade de France while President Holland attended a soccer game. Multiple gunmen then attacked bars and cafes across the 10th and 11th districts. At 9:40 p.m., 3 terrorists stormed the Bataclan concert hall, murdering 90 people in a packed venue. This devastating night is also a case study for community preparedness. You can tabletop it or run a live drill to see how your team would respond. Here's a simple example. Tabletop scenario example. Number 1, multiple attack points. Your community center is hosting a concert. Reports come in of attacks at the venue, a nearby restaurant in the parking lot. Decide in real time which areas to evacuate first and how to split your response teams. Number 2, role assignments. Assign first responders, security staff, medical teams, volunteers, and bystanders. Include clear decision makers for triage, communications, and crowd control. Number 3, response decisions. Walk through lockdown versus evacuation, safe routes, and how to move injured persons without creating more danger. Practice coordinating with outside responders who may be delayed or misinformed. Number 4, communication challenges. Simulate blocked cell networks, jammed radios, misinformation from eyewitnesses, or conflicting reports from social media. Decide how your team will verify information and pass instructions. And I'm just going to say this straight up. If you are not law enforcement or military, here on number 4 for communication challenges, it would behoove you to pay the $400 or $500 to get a business class license where the FCC will give you 5 dedicated frequencies in between normal channels with encryption and channel hopping so that your comms can't be taken down in this manner. Number 5, medical triage. Practice rapid assessment. Who needs an immediate help, who can wait, and how to manage limited resources until professional responders arrive. Include improvising with supplies on hand. Talk about what type of injuries you can expect to see. Number 6, crowd management and bystander actions. Train staff and volunteers on guiding people to safety, dealing with panic crowds, and instructing bystanders to provide basic first aid or assist with evacuations. Number 7, after action review, also known as AAR. Discuss what worked, what didn't, identify gaps in roles, communication training and equipment, update plans to fix weaknesses, Consider follow-up drills to reinforce lessons learned. Number 8, mental health and trauma response. Include strategies for supporting survivors and responders emotionally. Discuss counseling resources and community support options. Quick tips to help prepare your community. Number 1, identify high-risk locations in your area and map multiple escape routes. Number 2, assign specific roles to volunteers and staff before an event. Plan that GWAT veterans may choose to respond to a terrorist incident and have a plan to incorporate them safely. Number 3, test communication channels regularly, including backups. Cannot reinforce that enough. Far too many people, they go to Amazon, they buy a Baofeng UV5R, they get it home, they turn it on, they don't get their license. And I'm not a sad ham, so as far as emergency situations are concerned, I really don't care about that, but I do care about the educational side of it. And then they throw it in their Faraday bag or their preps, and then the shit hits the fan and they have no clue how to use it. And they believe the box when it said it has a 35-mile range, and it's a mile and a half in an urban environment. Number 4, keep basic first aid kits and emergency supplies accessible. Have stockpiles separate from the hospital in case it gets targeted. Number 5, run small drills frequently and review what went right and wrong. Also, red team your response and talk about what an adversary could learn from it to target you. The goal is to train and practice. It should not be fear-based. Make sure your community can act quickly, stay safe, and most importantly, save as many lives as possible. So, Randy, but for those people who aren't aware of this, let me get Jeff on this stage as well. Randy was a paramedic before he was a Green Beret. Randy, when you got dispatched to an emergency, whether it's a car wreck or something else, how many times did somebody come unglued and actually interfere in you doing your job that you had to deal with in one way or another so that you could actually care for the people who were injured?
Well, it happens more than you think. It's not every day and all the time, but it happens more than you think. It could be culturally, right? Like once this person was already expired, but regardless, it's the same type of deal. And we had to go to we had to take them from the emergency room to the county morgue, but they were Asian, right? And they encircled this person and wouldn't let us get to them because they didn't want us to take them. And I don't know what the reason was, but eventually the staff inside the emergency room tricked the whole family into going into the snack bar there and bought them some snacks so that we could now take this person and move them to the morgue. Unfortunately, one of them kind of got wind, or basically I guess, had let me go check real kind of quick kind of thing while everybody's getting snacks. And of course they caught us in the middle of it. This family actually chased us all the way down the freeway. I kid you not. And we literally called the morgue, and then they had the county sheriffs in front of the deal. So when we went down the ramp, they closed it off. But there were other times too. You know what I mean? It just when you're dealing with family and friends and things are happening, whether the person's expired or not or hurt, it brings out a lot of raw emotion.
Jeff, can you hear me? Okay, but Randy seems to have frozen up.
Oh, no, he's moving. I can see him.
Okay, he was froze up on my end. Sorry, Randy, I lost you for a second there.
I was going, hey, what's up? Yeah, no. So it happened a number of times throughout my service on an ambulance that for whatever reason, I think one of the part I was saying when I froze up on you was, whether on scene like that, as we've all seen on TV as well, it doesn't matter if that person's expired or if they're injured in some way. All that brings up a lot of raw emotion, in families and stuff. And just like anything else, you never know how someone's going to respond or react in those situations. And unfortunately, like I said, it's not all the time and every day, but it happens more than you think, that sometimes people just act adversely to it and, will do things they probably wouldn't normally do.
Just kind of a side question here, Randy. I had a friend of mine years ago. He was 53 years old. He was a big guy. He weight trained his entire life, but he was in good shape, very, very active. Had a massive heart attack and fell face first in his parents' kitchen. And his parents were elderly at the time, and the neighbor's wife was an RN. and she came running over and did what she could to try and revive him. And she told us afterwards that he was dead the minute he hit the floor. Like, it was such a massive heart attack.
Yeah.
But when the paramedics showed up, they worked on him for a period of time. I don't know how long it was, but it wasn't a minute. It was maybe like 5-10 minutes or something like that. And I asked the neighbor about it because her husband was a friend of mine. And I said, just out of curiosity, if you said he was already dead at that point in time, why did they do that? And she said, for the benefit of the family, so that nobody could say that there wasn't an attempt. Is that kind of a common protocol by chance to help people come to grips with the reality of the situation, that it wasn't a lack of effort, it's just unsavable?
Well, they teach you in school when you're going on an ambulance about CPR, and it in fact turns out to be true. Most of the time you do it, it's not going to have any effect, right? You know,
Wow.
but if the family is there, you're definitely going to continue doing it to show that you gave every last effort, because if that was your family member, that'd probably be what you would do, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So that is kind of a golden little rule, but it's going to be longer than 5 or 10 minutes. That's also a rule. If you start CPR, you're going to go through with it all the way, and you're talking about it could be 45 minutes or an hour, or it is you go until you get to the emergency room and hand them over to the emergency room staff, and then they continue it, and then they do whatever they're going to do, which will be shots and shocks and all kinds of stuff until the doctor calls it.
So as you know, I mean, my heart went into SVT years ago, and they stopped my heart with adenosine, and it didn't restart. And I've had a couple near-death experiences like that. Patrick Byrne, the guy who was the CEO of Overstock and Senate Intel Asset, has gone through the same thing multiple times with SVT, and they've stopped his heart, and it didn't restart, much like mine. And so they had to hit him a second time. But he said that the human body has this amazing thing where it will send one last blast of electricity through your central nervous system to try and jumpstart your heart after it's been stopped. And it could be minutes later. Have you ever seen anything like that, where somebody's gone, there's no pulse, you know, there's no bringing them back, and all of a sudden they lurch up and they're alive?
I have not personally witnessed it, but I have heard of it in multiple times, you know, including one of the most famous cases for Green Berets from Vietnam. The guy got the Medal of Honor was Benavidez, right? And this guy, you know, him and his team, I think most of them were killed. They got ambushed, and they got really tore up, and he had to fight his way through the whole thing and dragging wounded guys, including getting everybody on the helicopter to get them out of there. And when, you know, he was also, he was wounded numerous times, numerous different ways. And in fact, so bad, they put him in a body bag too on the bird, and they thought he was dead. And he was one of those that woke up in the body bag.
Wow, that's crazy.
So it does happen. You know, I don't know that happens to every single person. You know, I can't speak to that, but I know that it's happened on occasion.
That's just incredible. So, Jeff, I want to get us back on topic here. I mean, you're very well read. Is there anything that changed as far as first responders, SOPs, city planning in France or Europe in general, post 2015, post the complex coordinated attacks on Paris, that we haven't done here? In other words, are they better situated to handle CCTAs than us, or no?
You know, I don't know, to be honest. They have a different approach to EMTs than we do. And it kind of came to light when Princess Diana was in the accident and killed, and they were people were over here were saying, you know, the ambulance was in no hurry. It was driving along at a leisurely pace. They wanted her to die. And they go, no, that's not the way they do it there. They basically have a doctor on the ambulance, and he was working on her. And the reason they go at a more leisurely pace is that they're not bouncing the doctor around the back of the ambulance, you know, ripping through the city at 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But we take them to the emergency room and let the emergency room fix them. Their technique, or whatever you want to call it, is they essentially have the emergency room in the ambulance.
Interesting.
And so
I wonder if that's happening anywhere in America. That's an interesting
I
question.
do not know. I don't know that we got enough doctors to do that.
Yeah. Hey, so next audience poll, if any of y'all are aware of that type of SOP being used in America, do me a favor, put a 1 in the live chat, and then put what state it is, if you don't mind. You don't have to put your city or anything like that, but I'd like to see if anybody is aware of anything like that. So let's move on to our next one here. And here we go with a piece of gutter trash. So Democrat Rep Jasmine Crockett makes fun of how MAGA women look while standing next to a 6'5" dude wearing a dress. You know, a MAGA woman, when you see one, they all have a look, right? They lips be up to anyway, but yeah, they don't even know. So I mean, she's getting porkier by the day. She is a true blight on our country, just a massive piece of shit. Let me tell you something. I've been a lesbian trapped in a man's body my entire life. And when you go somewhere like Mar-a-Lago, like I was on Tuesday, the number of beautiful women will make your head spin, including my own wife. We are the exact opposite. Those of us who are the real Americans, our women are far better looking than the psychos on their side. But listen to what this bitch has to say. 38 seconds. And this guy, of course, the guy in the blue suit is a fag. And then you've got her. And then beside her, you've got a dude who's Lord knows how tall, 6'6", or he's wearing 10-inch heels, dressed up like a woman. And our women are the ones that are questionable. Give me a break.
Okay, a lot of the MAGA women receive gender-affirming care, such as lip fillers, breast augmentation, etc. Why do you think they are so against gender-affirming care for trans people?
You know you want to say it.
Okay, so I have this thing where, like, you know, a MAGA woman when you see one.
1000%.
They all have a look,
Big
right?
back,
But they like they lips be up to anyway. That's a whole other issue. But yeah, they don't even know, because when that was brought up on the House floor, because there was a discussion about this on the House floor, they were like, "How dare you say we use?" And it's like, no, that's exactly what y'all do. Y'all just didn't realize that that's what it is. But okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the women on our side of the equation are so much better looking, and they're not pill popping SSRI freaks or anything like that. That shit just blows me away. But that's one of the reasons I say, Randy, there's no reconciliation. We're not extending an olive branch to these freaks. So, I mean, give me your thoughts on it. I mean, this has become the norm for them.
Well, it's the same thing that side always does. First of all, Jasmine Crockett is an embarrassment to Texas. She's an embarrassment to this country, and she's an embarrassment to anybody that's ever held that office. It's a fact, you know, and she's a racist. That's her problem. She's a straight up racist and nothing but a straight up liar. So anything she says, I really totally disregard. I can't even read it because my watch will start going up, and I don't even have one that does that.
Well, it'll come through the screen and that might not probably. So let me ask you this question, Randy. Why is it acceptable to the legacy media and these assholes to demean and attack MAGA women, but God forbid you say something about mentally ill trannies or anything like that?
Well, I think that's the reason why. But part of what I left out when I just spoke was, like I said, I start off with something. You know, what they do is the same thing. They're going to accuse the other side of doing exactly what they're doing. This is no different. They know. I mean, we've had many pictures on here of some of these screaming women, and with the white ones have pink hair or purple hair, and they're just out of control. It's no different than her. And so, of course, somehow, and you look at some of the stars like we talked about the other day, where they were smoking hot 20 years ago, and you see them today and they look demonic. Yeah. And I think that's what it is. So that side is now saying, well, your side's ugly. Well, but we can clearly see which side is ugly. They can't see ugly anymore because they are it.
Yeah, that's an understatement. And Jeff, before I come to you, I want to just address Brian's comment here. Antifa women also have a look and smell, a bad smell, and they've got dicks as well. So keep that in mind.
There is that.
That is disgusting.
Well, I would just say, look, we have Sydney Sweeney on our side. They have Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes.
You know.
Well,
take your pick, man.
Perfect example.
Yeah, let me reel this back in though, and kind of get back to the topic at hand here, Jeff. When this type of bullshit is put out there by them, what potential effect do you think it would have on first responders in those cities that are heavily Democrat, and they have to triage, and you have somebody who's, you know, a good looking man and woman injured versus a chick with a dick over here that's injured? You know, I can see this for having legitimate consequences.
Well, yeah, because subconsciously you're going to make a decision, and you know you're going to be you're going to yeah, there you go. You would hope it doesn't come down to that, but I could also see it going the other way, because if the first responder in San Francisco is some freaking tranny, he may save the other tranny before it would save the normal people.
Yeah, well, I mean, Randy just mentioned maybe CPR is not the best thing, but I bet you they can suck and blow like there's no tomorrow.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I was an EMT in that tranny in that picture with her, I was just like, you got to get mouth to mouth, dude. You're going to die.
Well, actually, you know what? I mean, it's Friday night and I've already started cussing. So I've got to share this story. You guys have heard it. Many of our followers probably haven't heard this. So years ago, there were 3 booze cans in Daytona Beach. And I never went to any of them, but a buddy of mine owned 2 of them. And the other one was in the middle of the hood. And there was a rash of shootings in the parking lot. So this is a place where you would bring your booze to after hours. And they would charge you for your mix, and they charge you for your entry, and they'd go all night long, sort of thing, right? So as it turns out, all 3 of those clubs were on county islands, so a piece of land inside of a municipality that were not part of Daytona Beach. So what they did is they set up outside the parking lots, and all 3 of them, and everybody who pulled out, they would find a reason to pull them over and potentially slap a dewey on them, right? So before you know it, all 3 of these booze cans are gone. So my buddy Freddie, who's a super smart guy, great, he's done well business wise, he decides he's going to turn one of them into a gay club. So we're at a honky tonk country bar, and I get a text from him. He's like, "Hey man, what are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Well, we're over at the Rockin' Ranch watching, you know, whoever Hayfire, I think, was playing the band." And he said, "Well, why don't you all swing by my club in Ormond? You know, I'm over here tonight. I'd love to show you what we've built." So keep in mind, I'm competing at the time. Randy see me while I'm competing. I mean, it just, you can see through my skin. Basically, it was so lean. So we go over with my ex-wife and I, we walk in the door, and normally everybody would stare at her, but now they're all staring at me. And I'm watching these fat dudes come in here, walk up to the bar, sit down on a stool, take their shirt off, and some little fairy would come and sit in their lap, right? I mean, it was freaking brutal. I've never seen anything like it. So we're standing at the DJ booth and talking to Freddie, and Freddie says, "Hey, I got to go look after something. I'll be right back. I've told all the servers that your drinks are on me tonight. So if you want anything, just order it," sort of thing. So we're standing there. This thing comes out from behind the curtain. And by the way, Freddie had told us before that. He said the only way you can make money with these gay clubs is you have to have nonstop entertainment. If there's no entertainment, they just won't fly. So there's like this 4x4 area with a brass pole with this homo dancing on it. And this thing walks out from behind the curtain with high heels on everything. It's like 6'6", and then, you know, fell out of the ugly tree and hit every branch on the way down. And my ex-wife is drunk. She was a drinker. I wasn't. And she turns around, she looks at her, and she my ex-wife, you know, points at her tits, his tits, and says, "Are those real?" And this thing all snotty, like, "Yes, of course they are." And she's like, "Well, can I touch them?" And I'm just thinking to myself, "Oh my God." So she ends up, she's like, "Okay." He says, "Okay." So my ex-wife grabs them and she goes, "Oh my God, they're freezing cold." And so Freddie comes back, and I said to him, he's a ball buster, right? And I said to Freddie, I said, "Listen, if you bust my balls one more time in the gym, I am going to let everybody know of the debauchery that I witnessed at this club tonight." He doesn't even miss a beat. He's like, "Yeah, check your phone." I said, "What?" He's like, check your phone. So I pull my phone out of my back pocket. There's a picture of me standing next to this tranny thing. He said, you tell anybody what I'm up to here, I'm going to blast this picture all over the internet of you standing there with a tranny. He won that round. So anyway, we'll reel this thing back in and get back on topic. But again, it's Friday night. So this one is kind of shocking, to be honest with you, and in a good way. But I'm just surprised that somebody as high a profile as Joe Rogan would basically say we're on the verge of a civil war, which we've been saying for a long, long time. I'm going to play about a minute and a half of this video.
Charlie Kirk gets shot and people are celebrating. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. You want people to die that you disagree with? Like, where are we right now on the scale of 1 to civil war? Where are we? Are we at 7? Because I thought we were at 5. I thought we were like 4 or 5. But after the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm like, oh, we might be like 7. This might be like step 7 on the way to a bona fide civil war. As soon as you start like regular people celebrating somebody getting murdered in front of their wife and kid on television in front of the whole world, as soon as you celebrate that, like, man, you're in dark territory. You're in dark territory. And if the worst thing you could say about that guy is that he said some things I disagree with, and you're celebrating that he got shot in the neck in front of the world, whoa.
I used to dream about being a Secret Service agent, but then that passed when I realized the character that I liked on television was actually an actor playing a Secret Service agent. But luckily, I didn't become a Secret Service agent. I'd be having to protect Donald Trump right now, and that just wouldn't sit well.
You would have a very big job right now to do.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video there. Randy, your thoughts on Woody Harrelson, first and foremost, being part of the, Hollywood degenerates normalizing violence against people like the president of the fucking United States.
Well, you got to realize, Woody should have stayed in the what was it? The
bar serving Cheers.
No, we'll go a little bit closer to now. The zombie movie he was in.
Zombieland.
He should have stayed in Zombieland. And he's like many other actors. You should just shut your mouth and stick to your day job, because what you're saying now, it's like but none of them. There's very few up there in that part of the world, Hollywood, and any of them that speak differently, and it's because they still want to get paid. They want to be, in the crowd, and they want to get their next job. And so I don't know what he really believes, but I know by him saying that and that he would slip him some poison. I don't think I like Woody as much as I did before.
I don't like him at all. And Jeff, I got to ask you, at what point does this crap cross a line where there are consequences?
Well, I mean, you got so many people saying stupid crap like that. Mm-hmm. Unless it's an actual threat, it doesn't really matter legally. And as long as Hollywood is screaming lefty, they're not going to pay the price at work for it either. But the thing about it, Woody Harrelson, you got to realize his whole family's screwed up. His dad went to prison for murdering a federal judge.
Well, and he's on the Epstein list too, I do believe. I think
I would not be surprised. But his dad, and then his dad, I think, was on death row, and for the longest time he hated his dad because he ruined the family. And then he met him in prison, and then he's a great guy. Now his dad conned him, and he was trying to lobby to get his death sentence commuted and all sorts of stuff. But his dad was like, I want to say, I don't know if he did it on his own or he was a hitman who was hired to do it, but he killed a federal judge.
I did not know that.
In Texas.
Over your career, Jeff, did you ever take a DISC personality test?
No, I took Myers-Briggs. I didn't take DISC.
I've taken all of them. The DISC test is nowhere near as comprehensive as Myers-Briggs, a caliper profile, all that kind of stuff. But the guy who came up with the DISC assessment and I can only remember the D. The D means dominant, right? The other ones, I can't remember their exact meaning, but his premise was that 70% of our behavior is hard-coded into our DNA, and 30% is us adapting to our environment. So 70%, he referred to as natural behavior, 30% he referred to as adapted behavior. I'm not in a position to debate whether that's true or not, but the takeaway for me is that because you can't choose your parents, sometimes we end up with some horribly broken people who are adopted or raised in a different home that end up with these absolutely horrible, problems because you can't outrun your genetics. I mean, I don't know if you have any comment on that or not, but it's an interesting subject.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like my mother-in-law used to say that when her preacher said, he was talking about Gen X, he goes, find an ugly kid, follow him home, you'll find two ugly parents. And it probably goes the same way for kids that are just total whack jobs. Now, occasionally you'll find that person who is just a violent psychopath and their parents are relatively normal people. And you wonder, did the kid get dropped on his head as a toddler or something? You wonder, there's some sort of injury in there? Is there some sort of hormone imbalance? Or you just never know.
Yeah, agreed. So next one up here, this is pretty crazy. Trump derangement syndrome. Therapist says phenomena is real. The Daily Signal's Tyler O'Neill joins the national desk on Newsmax to discuss a recent Wall Street Journal op-ed in which the therapist says his clients have been suffering from what could be termed Trump derangement syndrome. He suggests the Trump obsession drove Democrats to shut down the government and warns that it will continue dividing our country. Shocking. I'll just play part of this video.
You've heard of Trump derangement syndrome, but the question is it real? Psychotherapist Jonathan Alpert says TDS, used to describe the toxic criticism towards Trump, is an existing problem. He wrote for the Wall Street Journal saying patients across the political spectrum have brought Donald Trump into therapy, not to discuss policy, but to process obsession, rage, and dread. Back with us is senior editor at the Daily Signal, Tyler O'Neill, and you've had some water, so you're good to go. This piece was just amazing to me. Now, we all say Trump derangement syndrome and that people, but this is a therapist who's been practicing therapy now for years. And he noticed a trend in 2016 where people are just obsessed, and they obsess on Donald Trump.
When somebody is constantly compared to Adolf Hitler, people almost saying that he's worse than the worst dictators in history, and they work themselves into a rage. I mean, we see it. And it's not just that one woman whose screams have been immortalized on the internet because when Trump got inaugurated, she's there screaming on the ground, but it's all across our society. People are not handling the fact that somebody who represents a rejection of the woke establishment and the way that Trump does could become president of the United States, could have the most powerful position essentially on the globe. And, Trump sends a really important message that the American people are not putting up with this anymore.
So I'll go ahead and stop it there. And Jeff, since you're center stage, I'll come right back to you. I mean, you worked at government agency for years. How might this TDS stuff actually affect national security decision-making in government agencies when we have, for lack of a better term, moles inside of our agencies afflicted with TDS and doing everything they can to sabotage his agenda?
Well, yeah, it absolutely could come to that because there are people who hate him so much, they put their hate of Trump above their love of country. They would sell out to the Russians or the Chinese just because they think it'll hurt Trump. And we've seen it more and more in the last 10 or 15 years. I don't know that it's not because of Trump. I just think he's a symptom of it or an example of it, because you've got people who they will see a man in a dress who calls himself a woman, and then they'll say, yeah, you're a woman. That's another derangement syndrome. That's I won't accept reality derangement syndrome. You get this is the equivalent of a 4-year-old girl saying she's a princess, and you have to call her a princess or you go to jail or something. it's when they're little kids, it's a temporary delusion. But if you're 45 and you think you're a princess, you're freaking nuts.
Absolutely.
And we're looking at, these are all various forms of mental illness. And rather than call them what they are, it's almost like, well, it's too hard to, if they're crazy, so we'll all just pretend they're sane. Not going to matter. It's like if a rabid dog is a rabid dog, pretending it's friendly isn't going to make it any less a rabid dog.
I think I told you this, but just in case I didn't, I asked the producers at Liberty Forge Productions why they chose me to host a live, late night show along the lines of Johnny Carson, but for conservative people, et cetera, et cetera. And the very first thing they said was my rants, my online rants against mentally ill transgenders is what put me at the head of the pack, sort of thing. So, anyway, something good comes out of everything. Randy, I mean, you've been in lots of hairy situations, whether it's Iraq, paramedic, etc. How can this type of mental affliction, potentially cause deaths in the field where people are just like, these people are happy about Charlie Kirk for crying out loud. They're demonic.
Well, they've come out and told us, right? Whether it's the burger flipper at Burger King that said, hey, if I see somebody with a Make America Great hat on again, I'm going to spit on their food, or I'm not going to make their food, period. We're not even going to serve them here. We've seen in other different aspects of the community, I've even seen a few where there are nurses and probably doctors too that said the same dang thing. So you think about that. Now, instead of actually doing their job, they're like exactly what Jeff just said. They put their hate of Trump above everything, not just this country, but everything. So if you come in wearing that hat and you need help in the emergency room, they may let you die first, solely because you have that hat on that says Make America Great Again. And somewhere along the line in the last 15 years, as this Reddit, as we've talked about many times, have started, it's built momentum this entire time. And they've been allowed to do that. So now it's like the norm, where when we grew up, people didn't do that. First, it was illegal. You might get arrested for saying things like we see people post on there. And in fact, people did during the Obama years. But I'm just saying that's how, if you go in an emergency room and you're hurt and they find out you're a conservative, they may not give you the same level of treatment.
Yeah.
Could be any doctor's office, anywhere trying to get that treatment. You know what I mean? Because that's where it becomes life and death. Or somebody could just get mad at you and shoot you, beat you with a bat, whatever the case may be. We've seen that stuff. And that's where it becomes life and death. And that's how significant this has become, because now people are able to justify it in their own mind. And just like the old, hey, it's your fault. You made me do this because you wore that hat and it pissed me off.
So speaking of hats, both times that Cindy and I have been invited to Mar-a-Lago, President Trump put a gift bag together for everybody. And this hat that says Make America Pray Again was a gift from President Trump this past Tuesday night when Cindy and I were there. So it's kind of the same as the red hat you're discussing, just different kind of thing.
No, that's exactly right. No, Robert Robertson just said, that's the tearing of the fabric of America. Yeah. And it lends to what I spoke about a couple of weeks back, because God is the golden thread of America from the time that he put the message in Christopher Columbus that it was over here to be in 100 years, so that the culture became right and the Reformation was around and people came over for the right reasons, on to everything that happened through our War of Independence with our forefathers. They knew God was helping them. God is the golden thread of the fabric of America. And when you pull it out, because guess what the golden thread is, for those that don't know, most older people know, a golden thread through any fabric or any blanket or anything else makes it stronger, and also makes it more valuable.
Correct. Yeah. Well said, Randy. All right. So last post or news item from the SITREP before we get into the main topic. The digital ID warning, they don't want you to hear, 1 minute, 32 seconds. We're going to watch the whole thing. Let me just back that up at the beginning.
Independent journalist Michael Schellenberger has been digging into the digital ID issue. He just released a lengthy piece on this on his Substack called Public. He joins us now with his thoughts. Michael, Look, the argument is it's like it'll help thwart illegal immigration, ID fraud, streamline healthcare services. Sounds fantastic. What the heck's the problem?
Right. Hey, great to be with you, Laura. Yeah, I mean, another conspiracy theory that has started coming true. I mean, we saw this announcement in September. It took everybody by surprise. The World Economic Forum had been pushing digital IDs, the United Nations, the European Union, Britain. Of course, the really terrifying example is China, which uses digital IDs and a social credit score to control speech and to control what people think and say online. I mean, it could come in a lot of different ways. They'll start voluntary, then they'll make it mandatory. They'll have rewards, and then they'll have punishments. It's quite terrifying. And when you just listen to what the advocates for digital IDs say, it's terrifying. And, you know, Laura, one thing I learned from this last round of investigations is that this is a huge cybersecurity threat. The idea that, I mean, imagine if you get hacked in one of the many websites that you log into. Imagine everything suddenly being hacked because it's all centralized in a single place. That cybersecurity threat alone ought to be enough to kill the digital ID. But again, this is potentially digital totalitarianism.
This is bad stuff. So you're still center stage, Randy. I'll go to you first. How could a database that's this comprehensive on every American potentially be used against us by our enemies in your estimation?
Oh, goodness. I mean, in every way possible. We already see it every time something gets hacked. And, you know, it wasn't until the internet that people start getting their ID stolen quite the way that they are now. I'm sure it's probably always been around, but way harder and way less heard about. And as we all know now, it's a normal, common thing that people get their ID stolen. Well, what happens when that happens? You get your credit ruined and everything else. I mean, you know, think about how much trouble that causes people. And then to think that they're going to put it all in one location, like, I don't know, do we have any database that hasn't been breached? It seems like they've all been breached over the last 20 years. So why would you do that? Well, I think it's because of what they said, you know, because China's able to use that to punish you. And you think about how much they all wanted to silence us through social media. But think if they'd had a chip where they could punish you punitively, like through taking your money, where you can't go to work or whatever the case may be, then just think about how much control they have. And that's what it all comes down to, control.
I would answer your question before I go to Jeff. I would say Epstein's client list and Hillary Clinton's email server are the only two instances of data that
No, that's not true.
Been broached and publicly put out there.
That's not true. We know the Russians and the Chinese both hacked her server. It just didn't get carried on the news.
Why I haven't been put out there. Yeah, exactly. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say what Randy was talking about. You know, we see it all the time. It happens constantly. And they're going to swear to God, we'll keep it safe this time. We put it in a room with a screen door on it, but we locked the screen door. Yeah, and your bank accounts are going to get drained. Your ID is going to get stolen. They'll probably end up stealing your house. It's just going to be a nightmare because they suck at that. They suck at protecting data. I dare you to find one data set anywhere on this frickin' planet that has not been breached at one point or another. And it is just ridiculous. This is the dumbest thing that could ever happen.
So before we switch gears into the main topic, how do you think terrorists could exploit vulnerabilities in these, centralized digital ID systems to have a really negative effect on us?
How many people they're doing, Simply Safe and all these ADTs where they can remotely unlock your house.
Yep.
Oh, you've locked yourself out. Call us, give us your little passcode, and we'll unlock your house for us. Well, that passcode has to be written down somewhere, and it's got to be on some system so they know if you give them the right one. So you hack that. Right. One, you can either just open the doors directly, or you can go turn off the alarm system remotely. Or you can have them do that because you've got the right password or security code or whatever. They can get to your house, they can get to your money, and with the new cars, they can turn the cars off.
Yep.
Because Ford or one of them already, maybe it had been Tesla, they already had it that if your car was being repossessed or you didn't pay your lease, the car would drive itself back to the dealership, whether you're in it or not. So they can take, where does it stop? And then wait, if people go to robots in their homes, I don't mean like the ones that clean your floors. I mean like, the Optima from Tesla. What if they hack that? And it decides to kill you.
Right. Skynet, right?
Yeah.
A few things that immediately come to mind. So we've got hard intel showing that the Islamic Army wants to exact retribution on GWAT veterans. So that was the first thing that popped into my head from a terrorist perspective, is identify, our GWAT vets and write down to where they live, where they work, and all that type of information would be a concern. On the subject of alarms, it's great input, Jeff. Cell phone jammers are illegal in America, but you can still buy them and get them across the border if you're, so inclined. But you do not need to have any type of special license or equipment to take a cell phone bridge and connect it to a power source close to somebody's home that the alarm system sees as a cell phone tower. So all these devices are dumb, right? Your smartphone is a dumb phone. It will connect to the closest, strongest beacon/antenna that it can find. So we had a hurricane a few years ago, messed up the tower in our neighborhood for T-Mobile. They say they fixed it. They haven't fixed it. And as a result of that, they sent me a bridge. So it sits in my living room and it poses as a 5G, tower, as well as a voice tower, SMS tower, everything. Okay. So our phones automatically connect to that, and then they shunt everything over our Gig-E fiber connection. If you take one of those bridges and you put it in proximity to someone's home with a power source and it's not connected to the internet, guess what? Your calls are going nowhere. Your alarm calls are going nowhere. And the bad guys have been doing this.
Now, this is the irony, is the first book I wrote 10 years ago has that in it, where a guy breaks into a house, he cuts the landlines, the alarm system. It was a very expensive home. The alarm system had a cell backup. Well, he just did a cell trap, which is a bridge.
Yeah,
and it
simple.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. The tourism, the burglary tourism that was happening under Biden was using these types of devices in wealthy neighborhoods in California, right? They would stick one in a neighborhood that they'd cased, and then they would just break into all these rich homes and steal whatever they wanted. The alarm system was going nowhere because it was ending right at that bridge, that tower. So we're going to pivot into the main topic tonight. I want to mention one thing quickly. Our friends at POClink have come up with a solution. So if you're a survival dispatch guardian and you want to get the SDENS notifications, survival dispatch emergency notification system stuff, to your POClink radios, all you have to do is email support@poclink.com, mention that you're a survival dispatch guardian, and they will get you into a group so that when we broadcast emergency messages, you get them. These guys are $399 for two of them, and they still have the sale on for unlimited global use, so around the world for the life of the device with no annual fee, whereas everybody else charges 30, 40, 50, 75 bucks a year for that. And there's links in our sit rep. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, there's links in there. And if you sign up as a guardian right now, by the way, if you use the code T as in Tom, W as in Wayne, 20, TW20, ends at midnight tonight, but you get 20% off of our annual membership. So instead of $74.99, it's $59.99, and that gets you access to all 5 of our Signal channels. We have these dedicated channels. We have a Guardians chat for chit chat, and amongst other things, we have a news channel that's run by 12 people who just are absolutely amazing at gathering tons of news. We have the emergency notification channel. We have a channel for survival and prepping, and it's we could have never planned things to go this way. There's all kinds of other benefits that I'll get to later in the show, but the most popular thing that brings people into our community is the fact that they can connect with like-minded individuals. They can talk to the survival dispatch team in all of our signal channels. And on top of which, we're short-circuiting the bullshit legacy media. We now have many guardians across the country. And we've had situations. We had one in Portland where the news was reporting one thing, and somebody who lived in Portland who's a guardian said, yeah, I just drove by there, and that's not happening. There aren't hundreds of people. There's a dozen nutcases there, and they just zoomed in on it to make it look like it was more people. So you may or may not trust people on X. You probably don't trust legacy media, but our guardian members, man, they've blown the lid off of that sort of stuff. So with that being said, I want to get us started on tonight's topic, which is a post 9/11 2.0, which is complex coordinated terrorist attacks on 10 to 15 American cities simultaneously. And again, we called it Hope Beyond the Ruins. And this is the promise of renewal, how we can rebuild a stronger future. So we have multiple intelligence sources. It's not just one. We have multiple intelligence sources confirming that we have a shit ton of jihadi sleeper cells in our country. Shocking. I know we left the border wide open for 4 years. It's just shocking that this happened, right? And they are poised to execute coordinated attacks across 10 to 15 tier 2 cities, population 100K to 500K, that will completely overwhelm emergency services and cripple infrastructure. You're looking at somewhere between, you've got 10 to 15 cities being attacked with 10 to 15 sleeper cells in each city that have maybe somewhere between 4 and 12, 13, 14 jihadis per cell enacting a CCTA or CCTAs, complex coordinated terrorist attacks, like Mumbai 2008. Go watch Hotel Mumbai if you want to see a really good representation of what CCTAs look like. So these operatives that are here, you know, they've got legitimate, you know, covers. They don't appear to stand out. We have very specific intel that these sleeper cells are comprised of terrorists from different groups. So for example, if you had an ISIS terrorist cell, intel wise, there was a better chance of identifying that sleeper cell because all of the instructions are coming from one source. But now you got sleeper cells that are comprised of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, TTP, Taliban, you know, Boko Haram, and the list goes on and on and on. It makes it really hard for our intelligence agencies to hone in on that, which, by the way, if you missed our broadcast on Wednesday, I had a conversation with General Flynn at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday night, and it's the first time I've met him face to face. And his assistant, who I've been working with for a couple of years, she said to him, she said, this is the guy with the 9/11 2.0 podcast. And his exact words were, he said, you know, I was the head of the DIA, right? Which is the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I said, yes, sir. And he had already announced it to the entire crowd at Mar-a-Lago. He said, we have hard evidence. My guys who are still at the DIA have hard evidence that this complex coordinated terrorist attack that's hitting 10 to 15 cities nationwide is going to happen in the next 90 days. And that was the original attack window, by the way. If you hone it down to where Sarah Adams is looking at it, mid-December to Ramadan, which is February 18th, 2026. So when I say we have intelligence at all kinds of different levels on this. But, you know, the one thing that I would say is pretty unique to America, when the shit hits the fan, we come together and we make stuff happen. Now, I don't think we'll ever come together with the fake Americans, the woke progressive idiots. They're not of our, you know, they're not cut from the same cloth as us, but the rest of us, the real Americans, as Randy likes to call us, will absolutely come together. You're going to see local heroes spring up. You're going to see churches resuming their role as centers of community life like they were when we grew up. And you're going to see restoration, I believe, of the God-fearing principles that this country was founded on. I don't give a shit if you disagree with me. You're wrong. I'm right. End of story on that one. So unveiling the sleeper cell threat, we discussed sleeper cells a little bit last night as well. So these sleeper cells have burrowed into our country so much. So number one, a lot of them, when they crossed the border, they had a phone number to call. They called the number and the number said, go to wherever and we'll pick you up. And they've been hiding in that house ever since. So they have enablers who go out and get food. And all these guys do is stay inside these homes. The public never sees them. They're training for that day when they can get their 72 goats. And none of us are any the wiser that these guys are even in our city. And I mean, this plot is so complex and sophisticated. It's going to make 9/11 1.0 look like a blip on the radar, number one. Number two, it's not going to be a one and done. We have hundreds of thousands of either terrorists or people associated with terrorist groups in the country. This is going to go on for a very, very long time. And these are not ghosts, from overseas. These are people here. And many of them were radicalized before they came here, but we have people here now who've been radicalized in places like Dearborn, et cetera, et cetera. They're stockpiling gear. They're stockpiling everything they need for these attacks. And again, like in the military, our military, and we've discussed this with Randy, there are 11 support personnel to every guy who carries a rifle in our military. And I would argue that these jihadis are probably have a similar type of number where there's 10 to 15 people supporting each of the jihadis who is part of these sleeper cells and will actually carry out these attacks. So, I mean, it's kind of a wake up for a lot of people right now. We're seeing a little bit more coverage. When General Flynn on Monday spoke up on Alex Jones's show, for whatever reason, that seemed to have a pretty big impact on a lot of people's thoughts or awareness, I should say, of this basically looming over us. It's still not as big as it needs to be. We're still not as prepared as we need to be, but thankfully some people are starting to listen. So with that being said, Jeff, I'm going to come to you first since you were CIA. And I know we've covered this in the past, but again, we have a constantly evolving and growing audience, which, by the way, this is like episode number 60 something of 144 episodes that Clede and I put together. You can watch any of them in any order or not. Doesn't matter. Each of them stand on their own because we make sure we stitch them together. Jeff, what are some signs? Because I know I asked this of Clede. I don't recall if I asked you. What signs should people watch out for in their towns or even neighborhoods that would indicate there's potentially sleeper cells in that area?
Well, we've touched on this numerous times in the past, but you look for, they're not going to stand out. They're not going to be dressed like jihadis or anything like that. But you need to look for people who, you have maybe a house, one person comes and goes, but they buy enough groceries for 6 or 8 people. You've got someone who claims he's an insurance, he sells auto insurance, but you find out where he works. Does he really work there? Maybe he does. They'll be very non-specific, very wishy-washy in their answers because they aren't living that life. They're just pretending to live that life. So it's those little anomalies are what you need to look at. People who maybe comings and goings at really odd hours of the day and night. If someone has a 4-bedroom house, but there are no kids, there's no toys in the yard. Most people who have larger homes have children. Children have toys get left in the yard. So that might be, okay, who else is living in that house? Why would they have 4 bedrooms if they don't have a family, if the guy appears to be single? It's just things the dots that don't connect.
Good suggestion from Guy here. Halal food featured in supermarkets. That's a good one. So I have another question for you because we have a smaller panel tonight. But the first thing is just curious. Have you noticed how we're seeing AI used to post pictures of known jihadis without beards? Because the intel says these guys come over and either before or when they get here, they shave their beards off so they don't look like the pictures we have. I think that's a pretty good use of it.
Yeah,
AI.
I have not seen that, but that would be a good use of AI.
Yeah, I thought so as well. So in your view, Jeff, what do you think are the most likely triggers that'll cause them to flick the switch and activate the sleeper cells in 9/11 2.0 across multiple U.S. cities?
Well, I think there might be a couple of different types. There could be one if like an attack on a country that supports them. Maybe an attack on Iran or something like that, which is they feel the need to either avenge or, okay, you took the fight to us, we're going to take the fight to you. Another, I think, would be a day that they see as having special meaning. Christmas, for example, a meaning to us, to basically undermine us, or a day that has special meaning to them, the end of Ramadan, a special holiday. And the beauty of something like that from their perspective is they don't need to send a signal. All they can do is just say, okay, Christmas morning or Christmas Eve, go do it. And so then they give them those marching orders, and they just walk away. Nobody has to contact anybody.
Yeah, it's the simplicity is unbelievable. Randy, why have the feds been dragging their feet on this sharing info? We've talked multiple times how we get tons of emails from law enforcement officers, firefighters, paramedics saying, hey, my department is not covering this at all. Could you give me something to take to my chief? So we give them, Joe Kent's report from the NCTC, and the chief turns around and says, well, the feds aren't giving us any information, so we don't believe this is real. I know we've covered this question, but it still boggles me. What is the motivation to not prepare people for what's coming that we know is coming? They know is coming. There's no shortage of intel.
Well, let's just take September 11th, for example, right? They had to have some things get done. The Patriot Act would have never got signed before September 11th happened. And we wanted it to. They needed it to. And those are the organizations that did. And as I've said many times, I don't think any of these federal organizations, even though now that Trump is in office, none of these federal agencies are on our side. They're all anti-American, in fact. That is a fact. Because you look at what they've done during the Obama years and the Biden or the old Biden years, that was the intelligence agencies. That was both the CIA and the FBI. And they're not on our side. So I call them anti-American because of the things that they've done over the last few years. And I've also, longer than that, in fact. But I just think that's why we're seeing that. And what would be the motive? Well, at this point in time, we know that there's a Patriot Act 2 out there. I don't know what else they got to answer for. I do remember on September 11th, like within a couple of days, the Pentagon was going to have to answer the $2 trillion that we're missing.
That's right.
And after September 11th, you never heard another word about it. Not one word to this day about where that $2 trillion went. And think about all the money that's went out just on GWAT. And now you throw on top of it Ukraine and Israel, both of those conflicts. I mean, there's no telling really for us to know exactly why. But I go back to the people again. Who are people that are powerful enough to give these agencies marching orders? There's not very many people on the planet or even in this country that have that kind of power. And those people want to fundamentally change how things are going right now. And America and our freedoms and the middle class and the American people are in their way.
Well, there's another reason it could be happening, and it's not as sinister, but it's just as ridiculous. If you identify a problem or admit to a problem, the next step is someone's going to say, okay, fix it.
Yep.
But if you say there's no problem to fix, you don't have to do anything. Yep. And you still collect your big fat paycheck. You still have your power over your organization, and you don't have to do anything. And that just boils down to the lazy bureaucrat whose job is to maintain his bureaucracy, not to actually accomplish anything, but to maintain the structure of his bureaucracy and his power. And you can't do that if you admit there's a problem out there that you cannot or will not solve, because you'll be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, you can sum it up in one word: swamp.
Yep. Yeah.
So moving into segment number 2, some immediate survival strategies. So when this thing kicks off in a dozen cities, let's say all at once, somewhere between 10 and 15, you'll have a split-second choice to run, hide, or fight. And unfortunately, a lot of people go into condition black where they just freeze up. And that's the last situation you want to find yourself in. But here's the one thing that I'm asking our audience, whether you're new or not, to take away from this. If you or anybody in your family or circle is unfortunate enough to find themselves on the X when the attacks kick off and they survive that initial attack, get as far away as fast as you possibly can. The secondary and tertiary attacks are set up basically to sit and wait for first responders and then let off the next VBIED, so vehicle-borne IED, and kill as many of those first responders they possibly can. Number two, it's a typical jihadi thing to dress up like law enforcement paramedics. So the initial attacks happen, you see what you perceive to be law enforcement officers, you run towards them for safety, and they shoot you, DRT, dead right there, sort of thing. Don't interact with first responders if you don't absolutely have to. Just get as far away as fast as you possibly can, because the secondary and tertiary attacks will be worse than the primary, the initial attack. The initial attack, are they trying to kill people? Yes. But the initial attack is to basically draw in the first responders. Yep. And more people there to help. So there's a psychological condition, the name escapes me right now, but the human mind will do everything it possibly can to get back to a normal state of things as quickly as it possibly can. So what that means is that, you know, the attack happens, you're on the X, you survive it. The human brain basically is like, phew, thank God, you know, I dodged a bullet there. They want things to return to sanity as fast as possible. We all do. It's hard coded in our brains. And if you're not aware of this and you stick around, it's not going to end well for you whatsoever. So there's a bunch of things that we've discussed. Mike Glover's with us every Wednesday night. Mike's a good friend of mine, and we work together. We have a media company called Outlaw Media Group. But here's some things, you know, you should be stockpiling water, meds. You should have a get home bag with you at all points in time, not a bug out bag, a get home bag. Average American works 18 miles from home. You should have alternate ways to get home. 83% of Americans live in cities and have absolutely nowhere to bug out to. So you're not bugging out anywhere. You're bugging in, but you got to get home first. And it's highly likely 9/11 2.0 will kick off just like 9/11 1.0 during busy morning rush hours when families are dispersed. You're at work, your spouse is at work, the kids are at school, and it inflicts maximum chaos at that time of day. And here's the thing. Let's just say all of the intel's wrong. Let's just say we're all wrong about this whatsoever. Every single thing that we have counseled y'all to do in this 144 episode series applies to any type of calamity you can imagine. So if you're stockpiling food with a long shelf life, like our favorite meat, Carnivalt, and I'll speak more on that later, and water, and say you go to Jace Medical, you have antibiotic kits, so on and so forth. Well, if you live in the Southeast and a hurricane hits, you're prepared for it. You have all the basics in place. If you live in California and wildfires break out, you should have a go bag ready to leave, sort of thing. And you could take pretty much any calamity, any natural calamity applies to it. So it's not like you're betting on a horse that'll never come in. And, you know, basically, if you have to hunker down for whatever the calamity is, whatever the reason, you don't want to become a refugee in a FEMA camp, which means you have to be self-sufficient and you have to have a bond with people in your community, because you're not going to survive as the lone wolf, so to speak. You should be training your family on simple drills. Here's one that we use: avalanche. So somebody brought up something with regards to some other survival person on the internet, and this person said, if I ever play this song, it means the shit's hitting the fan. And that's a good practice. Ours is more simple, though. If I ever say the word avalanche in person, if I ever show an avalanche on our show, I show a picture of an avalanche, I say anything about an avalanche, it means the shit is hitting the fan. And it's time to exfil as fast as you possibly can, or get home, or get to your rally point if you need to fetch your children from school. Basic first aid. If you haven't taken a Stop the Bleed course, do something like that and get trained, not just first aid, but self-defense as well. You know, it's a big step for some people who don't want to get into that level of physical activity. But if you don't, Human beings never rise to the occasion. They fall to their level of training. Look up Lumberton, North Carolina carjacker and Good Samaritan killed. So you have a guy who steals an F-350 that's decked out with toolboxes across the back. The carjacker sitting in the driver's seat. The door is open. Good Samaritan, who's working on the construction site, is 5 feet away from him, takes 5 shots at point blank range, misses all 5. Carjacker backs up about 50 yards, puts his toe into it, runs over the Good Samaritan, kills him dead right there. So people, if you most people go into condition black, and even if you don't go into condition black, you can expect to lose your fine motor skills if you've never been under that type of stress, which is why you hear us and many other people say guys like Randy, GWAT vets are far better prepared than any law enforcement, including SWAT teams. So with all of that being said, Jeff, I'm going to come back to you first and foremost on this one. How can people who are living paycheck to paycheck, how do they prepare for this stuff, Jeff, when they're struggling to make ends meet? And I get it. We've all been there at some point in life.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
Well, start small. Start a little bit at a time. Start with things that are relatively inexpensive. You can buy a big bag of rice for next to nothing. Same thing with beans. And they have damn near infinite shelf lives. You know, you don't have to go for the fancy stuff. You don't have to go with all the freeze-dried foods and all that. Just start with stuff that is relatively cheap and readily available, and start there. And then, you know, when it comes to your food, you know, build from there. Like you've always said, when you go to the store, if you're going to buy a case of water, buy another case of water and put it in the garage, or put it in the storage room, put it in the pantry. And if you do, you know, you do a little bit every week, you'd be amazed at how fast that stuff piles up.
100%.
And if you need if you have a gun, great, get ammo for it. You don't have to have a $2,000, staccato pistol. You don't have to have, a $10,000 rifle. Cheap works. Mossberg pumps, shotguns have been around forever because they work, they're cheap, and they're reliable.
So these complex coordinated terrorist attacks are not something new. The most publicized one, of course, the blueprint that is Mumbai 2008. But as you've pointed out, there are many examples of CCTAs happening before that. What's the number one mistake people make at the beginning of a CCTA that it will potentially end up costing them their life?
They don't get off the X.
Just hang out there.
They try to hunker down. They try to hide. They try to do, but it's like, yeah, if the guy is in the mall and he starts shooting up, yeah, get the hell out of there. Nothing makes you safer than distance.
Distance equals safety for sure.
Yeah, and so or they hunker down waiting for the cops to show up. Well, that means the cops are going to come and collect your corpse.
So are you telling me that the chief of police, whatever city it was in Canada a few months ago, said you should never, ever engage somebody who breaks into your home? Just call us and let us come and do the job.
Yeah, let us come clean
15-minute
clean
response
up
time. Yeah.
No, someone goes and breaks in your house in the middle of the night, you blow them right back out the door they came in.
Better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Randy, next one up for you here. When the grid goes down, because let's say there's kinetic attacks on substations in your particular area, or there's cyber attacks that take it down. You were an Echo at one point in time. For those who don't understand what that language means, it means that he was a communications expert as a Green Beret in his squad. I know we've covered this, but I also know we have a whole lot of new viewers recently. Recommendations for communications, your top 3 choices for communications when regular infrastructure takes a shit.
Well, as you know, hopefully, if the infrastructure takes a shit, it's going to depend on how significant that is, because your cell phone may still work. If we have power, you can still charge them or anything else. But, as I've gone with the POC Link myself, I've got those. That's my number one. I really don't have any more than that just because of finances, or I would probably have like 10 or 15 radios here. I would say even still something like a CB, right? Because even if the cell network goes down, CBs will still work. Now, you're not going to get the coverage out of them, but they still work. So a CB would be a good option. And I was going, man, I got this, I was thinking about the other day, and my printer stopped working, so I can't print out all the magazines. But I did buy another book. It's this guy's right here, Joel Lambert, a Navy SEALs bug-in guide. And man, I got to be honest, this guy did a really good job. I mean, a really good job. It's got, what we just talked about, how to even start stockpiling at a small level and build up to 3 months worth of food. Dude's even got 3 months of menus of what meals every day out of what stuff he recommended. He does have, let me see on the communications part here. I mean, he's got a lot of stuff here. The only seeds you need to stockpile for a crisis. There's all kinds of stuff about plants, defense. It does have somewhere in here about communications. And he has, I don't know, probably 5 different radios. I think he's similar to what you got. You know what I mean? I've seen some of the stuff. You've got 3 or 4 different platforms, probably more than that.
Yeah. It's as a tech communication.
But for the broke people, you're just going to have to do what you can do, honestly. You're going to have to ragtag and put things together. That's a fact. Because, and then if the power goes down and we don't have any power, that's going to be a completely different situation. Then depending on how long that goes, because for a while, and I stored up my couple of have some of those big battery packs, that have all the connections, and then you charge this thing and it'll charge your phone like 100 times. And I have a couple of those stored up, but sooner or later, all that stuff's going to run out if we don't get power back up. And then it's going to be down to shortwave. There's no, analog and shortwave will be it. CBs and analog and line of sight, unfortunately, may be the best you can get.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of shortwave HF.
Yeah.
But one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, yes, it'll get you the if you have the right antennas, you can literally cover the entire world off with shortwave HF.
Oh, I'm serious. I think I'm going to buy one of those bags of antenna. That thing, I used it in the Army. I know that thing works, and I know you can set it up practically anywhere.
Yeah,
and
so
I have.
Randy referring to the gear from Chameleon Antenna.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
you're a military
seriously.
contractor, but they have civilian grade stuff that the performance level is unparalleled. But what I was getting at before I ask you the next question is people hear, okay, shortwave HF, that's the way we can communicate across the country and to other continents. What you need to be aware of is there's a skip zone, which depending on where you live. So we have some favorable conditions here in Florida because the humidity levels, the salinity in the air, etc., where it's typically 3 miles. Most parts of the country, it's 5 miles. And what the skip zone is you're sending a high frequency, radio wave up, it hits the ionosphere and bounces back down again. Well, even with close range NVIS setups, you're not going to communicate inside that skip zone with shortwave HF. So 3 to 5 miles, that's where the CBs, GMRS,
it's exactly
ham
right.
radios, that's where they come into play. And if you want security, then business licenses. But question for you, we talked about, if you're on the X, shit hits the fan, distance equals safety. We know that malls have been identified in this. So think of a scenario of a mall, Randy, and what is your advice as far as evading and escaping that type of environment, like a mall environment, to put distance between you and the shit hitting the fan?
Well, my first advice, a lot of people aren't going to like, just don't go to the mall. Sure. During the holidays, there's plenty of Amazon, there's plenty of other stores you can go to. There's really no reason to go to a mall through the holidays. And I'm sorry, malls, if that puts you out of business. I mean, not that many people are going to listen to me and just do that, but that is a fact. Just don't go there. But, we know that people are going to, and there will be people there when they attack a mall. So if you're in a mall when it gets attacked, first off, what you have to realize now is you can't just go hopping on into the mall without any forethought. Okay, right. Now that I'm in the mall, if something happens, what am I going to do? It's no different than being in Little League Baseball, right? You know where you're going to go with the ball before the pitcher throws the ball. So, you need to start parking in a spot where you could get out. And I think I would start parking next to the ones that are a little less traveled by, right? Because if they attack the mall, the main entrances, they're going to be there. They're going to be at those main entrances. So I would park closer to the ones where you can get out in the side exit and start using those. But I would come up with a plan before I went into the mall. If something goes down and I'm here, hopefully you know the mall. If you don't know the mall, you're screwed. But if I'm here, I know there's an exit here. I know my car is here. And I would go about getting there as quickly as possible. But you also have to realize when you get close to that entrance and exit, you have to make sure, oh boy, isn't there waiting for you when you come running out thinking now you made it in the parking lot and they hose you. So all that is be prepared and have a plan. That is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, good point. I was going to raise it as well. It's a common tactic for these guys, jihadis, to set up at exits to a building. And when the thing goes down inside the building and people use those exits, they mow them down as they're coming out. So restaurants is a good example for me. If you're in a restaurant and this shit's going down, use the kitchen exit. Don't use the fire exits. Don't use the front door, because there's always a chance that a jihadi sitting there waiting for you to come out that way. But with that being said, that's the end of the second segment. We're going to go into the third segment now, which is the power of faith in crisis. So, you've got the aftermath of rubble and screams and smoke. Think 9/11 1.0 at ground zero. The world's completely gone mad. You've got jihadis are running down our streets. They've killed a bunch of people. And I would argue that having rock solid faith in something bigger than the fear can anchor you and steel your spine, as the saying goes, against the most evil elements that are out there. I would point out, while we're on that topic, by the way, that 62% of registered Democrat women report that they take SSRIs. If 62% admit to it, it's more like 82%. SSRIs that are used for anxiety and all these other mental issues have a very high rate of suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. And they take a basket case and turn them into a super basket case. I would argue all of these secular SSRI pill popping junkies will be the first ones to shit their pants and go into condition black, because they have no faith in anything. They're just miserable SOBs. And I'm sorry if that sounds ignorant, but it's the God's honest truth. So you're going to see churches turn into command posts. You're going to see people praying over each other when they're being attended to by paramedics. You'll see Bible verses etched in, people's minds. So Isaiah 18 is a good example. So the organizer of the event on Tuesday, Mar-a-Lago, Kyle Ray, is really great guy, a good friend of mine. He gave everybody a shirt. I don't know if I showed these to you, Randy and Jeff, but it says, "Send me Isaiah 18."
Oh, yeah.
And I wish I could wear it, but the black background, you can't see me. I look like a head that's floating around in the middle of a black hole, sort of thing. But it's one of my new favorite shirts, and I wore it in a meeting today, and I didn't have the black background. And the people, that's the first thing they commented on. They said, "Love your shirt." So, but that's a certain mentality, right, Randy? I mean, when you know that you're solid in that regard, there is no fear. So with all of that happening, that, everything in life comes to an end, good, bad, or otherwise. So you got to keep in mind that as bad as these terrorist attacks will be, they will come to an end. And if you have faith in that, it'll serve you well. If you're an SSRI pill popping junkie, then those people will probably have a heart attack or a stroke, or God knows what else will happen to them, condition black sort of thing. So, as these plots unfold across our cities, I would argue that it's not optional to lean on your circle of friends and family. And a lot of people, that means their church community. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And that type of resolve, in my opinion, and I've been through a number of pretty crazy situations, is what gets you through without going into condition black. So with that being said, Jeff, I mean, your father, your grandfather were both pastors. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind that either one of them would counsel people? Like if you're on the X and you're facing this shitstorm from these jihadis, is there any advice that you can think of that they would give their parishioners if they were still practicing? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, God helps those who help themselves. Yeah, if you're just going to sit there and wait for someone to rescue you, you're probably not going to get rescued.
So
take action.
I mean, this is Keith Graves' world. He's a good friend of ours, Christian Warrior Training. I'm wondering, is there what's the specific reason? I know the answer, but I want to hear you put it into much more articulate words. Why do you reckon jihadis target churches as soft targets?
Well, most Christians are peace-loving people, and peace-loving people generally don't think about violence on the regular, and therefore really don't prepare for it. I mean, up until the last 15, 20 years, you didn't really hear about attacks on churches at all. Churches were sanctuaries. When we were more of a unitary country, more culturally, homogeneous, churches where people congregated. It didn't even matter if you were a member of the church, you could go to the church. If you felt the need to pray, you could go to a Catholic church, you could go to a Baptist church.
Right.
It didn't matter. But now I think the jihadis, they want to do it to demoralize people. If the one place you can spiritually be safe isn't physically safe, it undermines your religion, your faith.
Yeah, agreed. So Randy, kind of keeping in the same vein of things, and I mean, you've been in combat. So in the thick of an attack, is there, one quick prayer or ritual that can steady people's nerves and get them refocused that stands out to you?
Well, I think it's anyone that you can remember, right? I think that, one of the most profound stories I heard about, and I forget the guy's name, but it was while I was at the Green Beret Foundation. So it had to be somewhere between 2012 and 2016. And I was at Fort Carson at 10th Group for a Silver Star presentation of a guy, right? And their team sergeant had been killed. They were on four-wheelers and they were coming in, and he got shot off of his, and they were now under cover, but there was all kinds of fire. But the team sergeant was still laying out there. And, basically this guy in his statement, when he said, as he accepted the Silver Star, that he said, there was so much fire that I was scared. I knew that I was going to die doing this, but there was no way I was going to let them get him. So I knelt down right there behind the wall, said a quick little prayer, and then I headed out. And he went and got the team sergeant, grabbed him back. Obviously, he was not killed during it. And it's, one can argue it's because he said a prayer, or he at least had, God's favor and able to get under withering enemy fire to go grab his buddy and pull him back so that, the bad guys didn't get his buddy, even though the guy was already dead. He got a Silver Star for that. But it just lends to that same thing. I've heard this many times over. This was not the only guy, and it's not just in combat. It's in tough times that people have been able to sit down and say a little prayer. It's kind of the same thing that I mentioned, when you get mad, if you ask yourself, or scared, like if the adrenaline hits, start asking yourself some questions, because you need the blood to leave. When you're in that fight or flight mode, the blood leaves your brain and goes into your bigger muscles of your body for the fight or the flight. You need your muscles for both. But at that moment, when you need blood in your brain or you to be able to think, there is none. So ask a few questions. I think the prayer does the same thing. Not only are you asking God for his protection, which is important, but I think it brings a calmness and a peace to you over that moment. And then you're able to respond and act accordingly.
Yeah, that was very well said, Randy. I appreciate that. Thank you. So that's the end of the third segment. We have 2 more segments to go. We always have 5 segments. Just a quick reminder that our promotion, and it's a threat wire promotion. So John Wheaton has been absolutely killing it with our security bulletins. And these are typically minute and a half to 3 minute security bulletins that he's releasing. And they became so popular so fast. I mean, we coined the term threatware a couple weeks ago, and I do not have the biggest, presence on X, but we use my X account. I mean, I don't even have 6,000 followers, and John is consistently getting 20,000 views on his threatware security bulletins that are released on my account on X, it's the hardest platform of them all. We've also been consistently at the top of the top Substack channels in the faith category. We're number 4 today, for example. We've been as high as number 1 even recently. But we launched a signal channel for Threatwire so people could discuss these security bulletins, get firsthand input from the SD team, amongst other people. We have tons of experts in our community that are not directly part of Survival Dispatch News. So until midnight tonight, if you sign up for an annual membership at survivaldispatch.news, and here you can see it. So when we're broadcasting, the video shows up, but otherwise you would see the daily sit rep situation report at the top. If you go to our website and you get registered tonight, you will get 20% off annual membership. So it takes it from $74.99 down to $59.99, and you get all the signal channels, all 5 of our signal channels. You get an emergency alert system enrollment. You get behind the scenes content. You get all of our survival resources that we normally charge for. You get early access to content. There's all kinds of stuff. But again, up until midnight tonight, survivaldispatch.news, use the code TW20, ThreatWave20, you get 20% off, and that'll get your annual plan at $59.99 instead of $74.99. We normally charge $7.99 a month. So you're essentially getting basically 5 months for free with the current special that we're running. So with that out of the way, let's get into segment number 4, forging unity amongst Americans. So imagine that the dust is settled again, good, bad, or otherwise, everything comes to an end, that has rocked these 10 to 15 cities and their communities. You'll see neighbors from every walk of life band together if they're real Americans. And I'm going to beat that term to death for the foreseeable and long-term future. We have 2 very diametrically opposed cultures in this country right now. There's 0 instances in recorded history of 2 or more diametrically opposed cultures surviving in one geography. And if you're not a real American, you are no friend of ours, and you don't deserve to call yourself an American at the end of the day. If you believe in communism, socialism, and that we should bend over and take whatever the Muslims and the alphabet people want us to do, you are just a weak-minded individual, to be quite frank. So with that being said, I think that this will pull communities of real Americans together, and that you'll see an increase in people who are interested in survival skills, gun skills, church activities, those sort of things. And again, 9/11 2.0 is not one and done. It's the kickoff to terrorist attacks on a more frequent basis. I would ask you this. Have you ever seen a year like 2025 where on a daily basis there's either a bomb threat hoax, multiple bomb threat hoaxes at soft targets, a false active shooter situation, or multiple ones happening? Those have all been probes on the part of the Islamic Army, right? So the Islamic Army is all the bad guys under one banner, all the jihadis under one banner. All of those so-called hoaxes are to determine what is law enforcement's SOP, standard operating procedure, where did they come from, how long did it take them to get there, where did they make people at that premise exfil the site. Many times it's in one location, which sets them up for, an easy slaughter, those sort of things. Those things are happening for a very specific reason, and they've been happening on a daily basis ever since Donald Trump was sworn in for his second term. And you should take heed of that, as well as the fact that I think Jeff pointed this out previously. I know Khalid pointed out, when all of that stops and there's no more of these probes happening, you're probably within 2 weeks of an attack, because they've gathered all of the intel that they need, then are confident to launching 9/11 2.0, and then all of the follow-on attacks that will continue on for Lord knows how many decades afterwards. So at the end of the day, I would say that the jihadis, by teaming up with the cartels, the misfits at Antifa, those sort of things, they're betting on the ability to amplify fear and the divisions in our society. And you just got to get your head wrapped around. Nick Freitas said this very well, and I had the pleasure of speaking with Nick on Tuesday night, by the way. What an amazing guy. We're way past reconciliation. Randy mentioned the people celebrating Charlie Kirk being killed. These people are not Americans. They are assholes. They are pieces of shit. How dare they, celebrate that? And how dare they try to censor anything that they disagree with, when he was one particular individual who put the rope on free spool and let people say their piece. How dare they? And you know what? You can only push people so far before they push back. And I foresee 9/11 2.0 galvanizing the real American part of the equation. And you other assholes, if any of you are watching and you think it's a good thing to burn the American flag, you think it's a good thing to attack cops and shoot cops, you're a scumbag. You're going straight to hell, and you will face a reckoning. Everybody faces a reckoning. I'm trying not to let my blood pressure get too high here. So, Jeff, I'm wondering if you can give me at least one example of unity after a terrorist attack, or even just, a brutal SHTF event happening. Is there anything you can think of as a real world example?
Well, I mean, after 9/11, New York came together.
I was just about to say, except for 9/11.
Yeah, the whole country did. Well, and after Pearl Harbor, nobody gave a rat's ass if they were Republicans or Democrats. They were all American. They all became Americans at that point. In the past, when there's been attacks on the nation, people have responded like Americans, not like Republicans or Democrats, conservatives or liberals or anything else. I don't have faith that will happen next time. It might on a smaller scale, like your neighborhood. You've got neighbors who are Republicans and Democrats. I think to protect their neighborhood, they'll all come together, because they're all going to be in the same pot of boiling water, and they're going to have to.
Sorry, Jeff, but who knows? This could be a mentally deficient individual, could be an AI bot, could be somebody a bot. But either way, if you're a real person, you can fuck off and die, you piece of shit. I'm telling you that your time is coming faster than you can possibly imagine. And if you're so fucking tough behind a keyboard, come and try pull some of the shit you assholes have been pulling on the left coast. You're going to get a firsthand lesson of what stand your ground means, you chicken chip piece of crap fucking keyboard warriors. You are not Americans.
Tell us how you really feel, Chris.
Oh, yeah, man. Don't hold back.
Don't internalize.
I am, pardon my French, I'm done with these motherfuckers doing stuff and threatening us. We have passed the Rubicon, just like Nick Freitas said. Fuck you. You are not real Americans. And you know what? At the end of the day, we will win. Mark my words. My watch is going absolutely fucking berserk. Pardon my French.
I can't believe that. I just don't believe that.
Anyway, go ahead, Jeff. Apologies.
But I think, like I was saying, is I don't trust the country to come together like that, just because I think if China attacked us tomorrow, there's huge swaths of the East and West Coast that would probably cheer for it. But on a smaller scale, a neighborhood level, small towns, I think they would come together because they're all in the same boat. But I think there's too many people who think, they can live without the other half of the country. And probably half the country could survive without the other half, but it's not the side the Democrats think it is.
It absolutely isn't. And I would argue, Jeff, by the way, that when the poll came out, online poll that said 12% of Americans were offended by the Sydney Sweeney good genes ad, that's the real number. There are not 50. Our elections have been rigged since 1913. There's some amazing content on that topic, by the way. I would encourage you to go look it up. Other than JFK, Trump's first win, second win, where we overcame the cheating. But this is not 50% real Americans, conservatives, and 50% nutcases. It's 12%. That 12% who was offended by Sydney Sweeney, that's what we're up against. But they rigged the polls and they cheat in the elections. So if you go read the polls, how they run them, and it says, oh, ma'am, dammy, 50% support versus whoever sort of thing. Click through to see the methodology, and you'll find that they poll 65% registered Democrats, 20% registered Republicans, 15% independents. It's all bullshit setting up the steal. They are nowhere near as large as, they try to make us believe the other side. Not even close. Randy, I got to turn it over to you before my blood pressure gets too completely out of control here, but I have a very specific question for you. What is your recommendation, Randy, for people who live in a neighborhood that is primarily made up of real Americans, and you have a couple bad people that are Joe Biden, Obama, Kamala freaks? How do you deal with that in your neighborhood when the shit hits the fan and it's every man for himself?
Well, I think that's a better odds than if it was the other way around, right? There's only one or two that believe what you do and the rest don't. I think if you've only got a couple, believe me, it's not going to take too many days if they're going to be over on your side. I have no doubt about that, to some degree, right? I guess it depends on how hardcore in line they are with those objectives. I don't know if it's a transgender person, maybe not, but I think normal folks, we'll just put it that way, normal folks, that some of them have been confused, will be unconfused with this. But otherwise, it really depends. I mean, I have a neighbor, I have one right now myself. I don't know what's either politically, but me and him do not get along at all. And I did nothing to the guy. So, but I know that when shit hits the fan, it's going to, I don't know. I will think twice before helping the guy. I'm not going to lie.
Absolutely.
I'll just put it honestly, because one, now I know I can't trust him. And if you can't trust people, you're not going to want them in your inner circle when all this goes down. That's a fact. You got to have people you can trust completely, that they're going to do the right thing, or that they have everybody's best interest at heart when it comes to the group, because it only takes a couple of individuals to fuck that all up. That's really all it takes. A couple of bad apples,
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say happy birthday to Mrs. Beanfried, and I think there was one other person way back there, but I forgot their name, so I apologize. But happy birthday to you guys. Thanks for always tuning in.
All right on, Randy. So I will say this much. We live in an old established neighborhood, one way in, one way out. And everybody had Donald Trump signs. We're Floridians here, other than a couple blue dots like Gainesville and Orlando. It's strongly real American territory that had, Joe Biden, Kamala signs and all that sort of stuff. And one of them's a complete and utter asshole. And their dogs got loose, and Cindy and one of the other neighbors helped. And those fucking assholes couldn't even thank her. They didn't even acknowledge her, that she assisted with this. And I'll tell you what, if those sons of bitches, this shit goes down and we end up, the wheels come off in our area and they come looking for help, I'm with you, Randy. Fuck them. They will get less than nothing from me but disdain. And God forbid they're stupid enough to try and take anything by force. So with that being said, we're into the final segment now, segment 5, vision for rebuilding stronger. So, the sirens and the bomb blasts are starting to fade. Yes, we have a whole bunch more jihadis and attacks upcoming, but for the moment, things are starting to, slow down. And now we've got to tackle this thing of rebuilding. And, I personally think that we'll come back stronger than ever before, because I believe, like you said, Randy, some of the people who are mental cases and confused will no longer be mental cases or confused. And there's a good chance they will not survive these types of events for a multitude of reasons. But I think that combines together where we come back together stronger. You're going to see fortified communities, smarter streets, for lack of a better term. And you're probably going to see a renaissance in people returning to church. What's it been now? 50 years that they've kicked our religion out of every single thing you can imagine, whether it's school or otherwise. It's okay that, golly, I'm pissy tonight. I'm fucking pissed off.
I think you saw it ramped up in the last few years, but it started in the 1800s is when they really started writing Christianity and taking God. The very first thing we used to have back in the day, pastoral chaplains to help guide them and,
Right.
you know, confer with them and that kind of stuff. That was the very first thing we clipped out. And then it went all the way now to public and schools and everything else.
So again, I think that this results in some sort of a renaissance for conservative American Christians and the values that we hold, which, you know, are a whole lot better than the fake Americans or the jihadis sort of thing. So it is entirely possible that these attacks on us will actually serve to strengthen our resolve and our bonds more so than not. So, you know, we will come back stronger than ever, is my opinion. My biggest concern, to be quite honest with you, is Patriot Act 2.0, and that the powers that be use that to basically control people worse than they ever did during Charlie 19, for example. So with that being said, Jeff, as an engineer, is there anything in our infrastructure that you can think of that wouldn't be a heavy lift to harden our cities and our communities against future attacks after 9/11 2.0, since we're basically out of time? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah. I'm trying to think here. You know, the one that would probably be the heaviest, just because it's so damn big and we haven't done anything with it, is the power grid.
Yeah.
But I think what we can do to strengthen it without hardening the entire thing is either decouple or make it real easy to decouple regions. When things are tied together and then you start getting catastrophic failures, especially if someone has turned off the damn SCADA systems, you know, you'll get a cascade and then the whole system goes down. When the whole system goes down, it's really hard to get it back up. Now, if a small part goes down, yeah, you can isolate it, fix it, and then bring power in from neighboring systems to energize it and bring it up. But if everything goes down and you're starting from scratch, it takes a long, long time. And it takes, in the gas system for homes, natural gas takes even longer, because when the gas system fails, you can't just turn it back on. If you get gas, you don't just pump it back up. You have to go to every single home and make sure that things are turned off inside that home before you can reconnect it to the gas main. And then because if there's something that's on and you turn it on and the people aren't there, the house fills up with gas and explodes. So it's a much more labor intensive process.
Let's drill down to the next level down. So as opposed to big infrastructure, you know, like gas supply, you know, power grids, the things that you pointed out, how do you take a horrible situation like this and do a better job of baking resilience into the soft targets, the things like schools in particular? Do you think we finally make some headway there to harden our schools?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we've built our schools historically for ease of access, which is not what we need now. We need to design and build schools, and we're doing it more, I think, with the modern schools, but to design and build schools that in a way that makes them defensible, and to put in, you know, school resource officers, basically police in the schools, so that the kids and the staff aren't sitting ducks to any idiot or idiots, plural, who walk in there with a weapon.
Yeah, that's I wish we could do that. I hope we can do that. I hope that's something good that comes out of a horrible situation. Randy, you're going to get the last question on tonight's main topic. If we get this right, meaning that we pull things together after these horrible attacks, what does a more resilient America look like 10 years down the road?
Well, you know, heck, if we could just find our way back to the 80s, right? That would be perfect. That would be perfect. Well, it seemed like it anyway. Maybe it wasn't. It's
well, I mean, we're both, you know, Gen Xers born at the end of the 60s. And we didn't realize how good we had in the 70s.
No. In the 70s and 80s, you know, it just seemed, life seemed simpler and easier. There wasn't all this political stuff. Heck, even racial relations were going pretty well.
Yeah.
We got to get back to where thinking that America and our freedoms, and again, that our rights come from God and not the government, and that the government is also submissive to God, and that our government is based on Christian principles and how the Bible and how God says the government should be ran. We should get back to doing that. If we just did that, we would be, oh, well, and besides, maybe that will help us do that, but I don't think it will. I think it will cement the fact that none of them will leave. But if we could get the 100 million people out of here that aren't supposed to be here, that would be a tremendous start.
Yeah. Yeah, it would. And I appreciate that a lot, Randy. So that basically wraps up our main topic tonight. And it just, to put a final wrap on this, we've got tons of intelligence across multiple agencies, some domestic, some foreign, showing that we have a massive number of sleeper cells in America just awaiting activation for complex coordinated terrorist attacks across America, which means right now, everybody who's watching, and plus the people who aren't watching that are in your circle, you need to make a commitment to having redundant communications with your family and your circles and strategically stockpiling the basics. So food and water, of course, stand out, but ammunition is another one that you should consider as well. Yeah. And if you got nothing else from tonight's episode, other than I think the American spirit of resilience anchored in our traditional values and faith and constitutional principles, that's going to be the foundation that we build upon after devastation. It's not going to be these woke, mentally ill individuals who think you can cut your dick off and become a woman. It's not, they're going to be left in the dust, thankfully. So you can also immediately start taking some action to strengthen your community, your neighborhood, your church. Get involved tomorrow, get involved right away, make a commitment to do your small piece. The mission for Survival Dispatch, since I acquired the company, and I changed its mission from what it was before, because I felt that with 83% of Americans living in cities, that urban survival is far more important than learning how to rub two sticks together to make a fire, which is what the original Survival Dispatch was focused on. But our mission is really simple. Our mission is to dispatch information to our fellow Americans and friends of America so you survive in these very dangerous times. It's that freaking simple. So as long as we can get information out that helps you guys, we average, when you add up all the platforms, we're not the biggest fish by a long stretch, but we average between 11 and 12 million views total per month across all platforms, 9 different platforms. Our best platform is Substack because they don't censor and suppress. Every other platform has taken pieces of our work down because we spoke out against mRNA. We spoke in favor of ivermectin. Even me just saying that right there could get me a warning from CommiTube, because I said, God forbid, I said ivermectin, which has only been taken 20 billion times since it was brought to market, and it's not patentable, so they can't rape you and get rich off it. But anyway, with all of that basically said, if we can make a little bit of a difference with the size of our audience, and again, we know we're not like the biggest out there because of suppression and censorship, then we've accomplished our mission. When we hear stories from people who say, hey, I was at a gas station, and instead of having my face buried in a weapon of mass distraction, I was paying attention, and I saw a bad guy who looked at me and then looked at the other person who had their face buried in their phone and ended up assaulting or robbing them instead of me. That's a win, and we'll take those wins all day long as far as passing on information so that you raise your situational awareness, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, this is one of my favorite times the entire night. It's the one and only time that my blood pressure actually comes down. 3, 2, 1. And it is time for the Carnival hero of the night. And Carnival is our premier sponsor, carnival.com. This is premium American meat products, beef, chicken, and pork. No mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. The bags are made in America. The O2 absorbers are made in America. The meat is 100% American. There's nothing coming from Argentina or other countries. And this is the healthiest whole food you can get. This bag had 6 ounces of top sirloin in it, reconstitutes in 5 to 10 minutes. Pro tip, put a little bit of salt in with the water. It'll reconstitute faster. Makes 1.5 pounds and 150 grams of real protein. These guys have done an amazing thing. It's raw meat, by the way. Everybody else, when you get it, it's been cooked. You reconstitute it, you cook it the second time. It's like shoe leather. It's why the pieces of meat are this big in other people's products, not so with Carnival. So with that being said, check this out. The caption is good. The woman coming in to pull the dog away is the real hero here. 35 seconds.
I'm like, fuck out of here. Fuck out my face. Say that N word again. Say that N word again. Say it again. Everybody, just some dogs. Say it again.
So I'll go ahead and end it there a couple seconds early. But that woman having the presence of mind and pull the dog out, kudos to her. That's tonight's Carnival Hero of the Night. And for the reader submitted story of the day, it comes to us from our friend Tim Smith, one of our news team guys in our Signal channels. This is what happens when actual law enforcement shows up. No lectures, no please sir, no social worker cosplay, just a clean takedown, a criminal off the street, and everyone else a little bit safer for it. Funny how competence looks shocking these days. Bookmark this. Should cops do more or less of this? And when you watch the video, if you think cops should do more of this, put a 1 in the live chat. If you think they shouldn't do this, put a 2 in the live chat. 1 minute, 9 seconds.
And take your hands out of your pockets. Take your hands out of your pockets. Take your hands out of your pockets and
Hey, little buddy.
This is bad to the bone. Look at that. Woo! Florida. Textbook tackle. That's what Steve, what's his name? That I love his videos. That's what he calls the Edison medicine. Right on. That was good stuff. So if you think we should see more of that from our cops, put a 1 in the live chat. If you think we shouldn't see more of that, put a 2 in the live chat. So next up and final thing for tonight is to do our conflicted question of the night. So the loss of a loved one has spiraled Simone into deep depression where she is contemplating suicide. How would you help a loved one through depression in the midst of the apocalypse? I'll go to you first, Jeff.
I think you got to give them something else to focus on. I mean, yeah, be sympathetic and be understanding, but at the same time, you can't just let them wallow in their despair. And a lot of times, if left to their own devices, that's exactly what they'll do. So you almost have to force them to engage, give them a job, give them a task, put them in charge of something or someone helping other people to give them a sense of purpose again.
Yeah, that's great advice, Jeff. Like absolutely great advice. Randy, your thoughts?
Well, we had this question before. It wasn't this particular one. It was a very similar one about a guy. And I said the same thing. What Jeff said is spot on, because you're going to have to give them a job that's worth them staying around. And it may be because they feel like I said at the beginning, the first time, maybe find a job that only they can do. It's going to require some thought and maybe a little out of the box stuff, but a job that only they can do, or at least make it seem that way, but without being disingenuous, because people pick up on that. But my point is, you have to give them something very important to do where they feel like even if they still want to kill themselves, they need to do this first. So you can at least get them off that path, because as Jeff said, and as we all know, if you just let them stay there, that spiral only goes one direction.
Yeah, true story. I don't have much to add to it other than I would find something that they have passion for and something that they have some skills and are reasonably good at it. And I wouldn't tell anybody else, by the way, what I was up to, so that when the praise comes from others, it's genuine and sincere. And it's like you said, Randy, it's not manufactured, but that's the only additional twist that I would put on your thoughts there. So I will be back on Sunday evening with the See Heaven show. So Chris Heaven, See Heaven, Heaven. And if you go to seeheaven.substack.com and you follow me there, you'll get a notification when I go live at 7 p.m. every Sunday night with zany, funny stuff like Steve Inman's videos. It only goes to X and Substack. If I sent it out to CommieTube or any of the other platforms, we'd get kicked off for sure. It's not politically correct stuff, but it's funny as hell. And it's a good way to start your week with a smile on your face before we get into the heavy topics like we did tonight. Last reminder, go to survivaldispatch.news. If you join as an annual member before midnight tonight, instead of paying $74.99, it's only $59.99 a year for a Guardian membership that gets you access to all 5 of our signal channels. There is a 6th one that has been started that's top secret. It's just between you and me, the thousands of people watching our show right now. It'll be launched on
top secret.
It's top secret. Yeah. It's so top secret. I have to keep it to my, few thousand closest friends here, but that'll be launching on Thanksgiving Day, but you get access to that and 20% discount already on a package that got you 2.5 months for free. I mean, you're basically getting 4 or 5 months for free with the deal we have on, but it's only till midnight tonight. If depending on where you click to sign up, if you have to put a code in, use the code T as in Tom, W as in W, 2020 all together. You get that 20% off deal. You get other stuff as well, but I've already covered them tonight, so I'm not going to repeat that. So I will be back on Sunday night. The crew will be back on Monday night with the next episode in our long war series. In addition to Carnival, which is our premier sponsor, CCW Safe, best self-defense coverage, bar none. And if you have any questions, you can always email support@survivaldispatch.com. Happy to answer them. But between now and then, if you could please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless America.
God bless America.
Enjoy the closing video and enjoy JJ Morris's and golly Brandon from BattleBox. We've got a video going live tomorrow morning or airing tomorrow morning on our Substack and coming out on CommieTube later on. Thanks again. Have a great night, y'all.
Jihadi.